Thank you for all of you who have stayed on here. I feel like, the South by Southwest is in the air here. And of course, we've had a double header now with Audigent. My colleague, Eric Schoikit, was just on the prior conversation. So I'm certainly excited to join the stage here with Rahul Chowdhury, with respect to the remarkable stuff that they're doing over at Reckitt Benckiser. So Rahul, great to see you again. How's your day today?
Thanks, Ted. Thanks, Brand Innovator, for having me here. It's quite exciting to be part of this. It's a very gloomy day out here in New York, but I still would like to pretend I'm in Texas somewhere.
Yeah, I didn't know what to wear. I didn't know whether I should be wearing like the Texas tuxedo, whether I should be wearing like Chris Sacca, should be wearing like a cowboy shirt. So I resolved towards something somewhat similar, trying to stay on theme. But you look great.
Thank you.
So I know that we wanted to kick off things. I know you had some interesting visuals that we can share, but I think just before we kick in, let me do a quick intro for both of us. I'm Ted Smith. I'm the head of enterprise sales for Audigent, as Eric noted before me. So Audigent is a first-party data platform. We're focused on the monetization of first-party data from some of the leading publishers out there around the globe, and we take this data and make it actionable across the digital marketing landscape. So advertisers such as Reckitt Benckiser can apply the data from everything to CTV across various platforms for their performance marketing campaign. So appreciate the opportunity to have this discussion with Rahul here, and excited to have this discussion with everybody. So Rahul has an amazing background. Last 8 years you've been with Reckitt Benckiser, specifically on the Lysol brands and some of the Hygiene brands over there. So excited to kind of dig into this conversation with you.
Same here, right? And just to kick things off, right, I would probably share my screen just to also give a little bit of an overview to everyone on what to expect. I have a very interesting topic to speak about, which is disrupting from inside. And I just felt that I probably capture my my thoughts probably in a few slides, so that it's a good start of a discussion, but also you have a few takeaways when you walk out of this room today on what the experience is. Let me start off with a very quick. So I'm Rahul, as Ted mentioned. I come from a very traditional marketing background for probably for around 5, 7, 8 years, and then increasingly moved into the digital space, and have spent the last 7, 8 years being in digital marketing, digital commerce, getting a lot into analytics insight kind of a space. By profession, I actually started off as a computer engineer, and that's driving my passion in technology. And then off the lead, I've just been blessed to be with a very lovely family with one son, a dog, and my wife she's just amazing. But folks who do not know what RB is, we are a CPG company, and we are better known for our brands. So Ted, you mentioned Lysol. It's been quite a humbling, satisfying experience for the last 1 year being a part of this brand, but also playing such a big role in today's world. But other than that, we also have a few more iconic brands like Airwick, Finish, Mucinex, Mr. Mucus, with an amazing character, Enfa. So that's me in a nutshell of where I am. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. So where have I been? I've been in this rustic world, which people call sometimes the wild, wild west. And I've been trying to build a team out there and have had quite a lot of success, but also have had very amazing experiences that I thought was very relevant for marketers who are listening today, but also for business leaders who are looking at where would the future be and how do we navigate this road. So the way we are structured, I for the last 3 years, I've been working as a part of a startup organization somewhat. And when I say startup, it essentially means we are responsible for our top line, and then we are responsible for our net bottom line. So it's pretty much like every year we go in and we say, okay, this is what we want to do. And we ask for resources, and we get whatever we think the management thinks that our plans are worthy of. But it is a very entrepreneur, brings a very entrepreneurial culture into the whole way of how do you drive a business. We have been able to grow the business 6 times in the last 3 years. But for me, the most important and most satisfying thing is building a digital native team from scratch. And it's around 15 members big, but it's more about how every 6 months you'd find an opportunity and you'd go after it and you'll resource for it and then you'll deliver it. And it's
can I ask, when you talk about building that team, is that building from internally or is it finding outside?
It's everywhere.
Or is it everything?
It's everywhere. It's everywhere because resource is really a shortage in today's world. At least till pre-COVID, where digital was something that CPGs played around a little bit, but we really went invested. It was always an interesting project to find the right resource for the right team. Even the skill sets needed and the talent needed would vary and keep changing over the last 3 years. But it was what I feel amazed is being able to bring the right people to the company, bring the right people to the role. And the thing which underpins everything is having a highly agile operating model. People are speaking about it, business have been speaking about it, but I still don't think everybody fathoms what it can deliver and how much pain it takes to really build an agile operating model. So what I thought was would be great is just sharing some of my experience out here with the team, and I promise to make it short because I know that Ted has a lot of different questions that he would love to know from me, and then I'm sure that people in the audience would also have to. So there is a simple 5 lessons I learned, and I try to capture them out here. Right, one is this whole concept of Avengers, A+ Avengers. The second is about hearing your consumers and hearing them here, which even here means immense where you are at that moment. The whole concept of evolve and pivot, that's pretty key to startup. I'll try to tell you what a bigger corporate and how did we manage it. And then it's sharpening, what I call sharpening your pencils, your ammunitions that you take to work every day. And then the last one is around owning your culture. So the first piece, building a team of Avengers. This is a piece that Ted, you referred to around how do you assemble that rock star team. When I don't use the word Avengers just for the glamour part of it, but I use it for everybody in the team, particularly in the digital world, have unique skill sets. Like somebody could be a search expert, somebody could be a content expert, somebody could be an analytics expert, somebody plays media like they're playing music, right? And it becomes an art for them. Essentially, you need to be able to understand what should be your team structure, what do you need, and where you can find them, and then you need to assemble them. Once you bring the team together, as we have all seen in this amazing 23 series of Avengers or Marvel comics, you need to nurture them because many of the times they don't know what role they need to play. Even they don't know how do they all come together. You need to keep them motivated and focused. And it goes without saying that it isn't an easy job. It isn't an easy job of having highly talented people with unique skill set, but bringing them together and making them work. There is a lot of ego. There's a lot of relearning, unlearning, and how do you work as a team. And essentially, as a leader, that's the biggest value you can add in is ensuring how can they work together.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I noted to you that I often made the analogy between Super Friends, which is a little bit more of a dated reference than the Avengers. But I think that when you build a team, like it's always interesting to think, do you find people that are multidisciplinary, people that can wear lots of hats, especially in a startup, there's that need. But at some point you need expertise and specialists and to understand how those different talents work together. So it's interesting to me how you consider, like, as a leader, how do you manage that balance between the different disciplines that are necessary and the expertise that's also critical, right?
Yeah, I've been wrapping my head around. I've shifted positions on this a couple of times. When my HR asks me, do you need specialist or do you need generalist? And sometimes I have swung the way where I felt like, I think generalist is what a startup needs, right? But then you swing up the other way when you really need to deliver on a few things. The skill set to build that takes years. It's an art that takes a lot of years to build in. So I'm now in the place where I believe it's a mix of both. But what you bring up is a very important, the final piece is the career path of all of these talent. Like you just don't want to bring them in and they getting stuck, but how do they evolve as professionals? And how do we as leaders build a career path is also a very interesting piece, right? So that's what I call nudge them towards their purpose. And I have had, I've had the satisfaction of seeing all of my team members evolve, some towards where they wanted to go, some towards where they decided they want to go back down a general path, right? But that's like my one big piece, and we can slice and dice this in all different ways as we move on through the slides, right? Towards the Q&A. The second piece is around hearing. Sorry, I don't know how to take this up. It should go up. I would like to believe. Let me try this screen again. I don't know. We probably have to live with this. So the second piece is around hearing consumers hear. And there are two words for me that are important. One is hear, H-E-A-R, as in listening to them. And the other one is bringing them within your organization. For me, this piece, and I think for every marketer, this piece really blew up during COVID. It was as if on March 8th, we all, as marketers, we all didn't know what to do because we didn't know what the world is. We didn't know where the world existed. We didn't know all pain points, right? What are the new pain points? What are people talking about? And that was a moment which made me realize is, imagine a world where you do not know anything. How do you build capabilities to listen and hear, and then build things around that to meet your purpose, meet your brand's purpose, meet your business purpose? There were a lot of things that we did, and analytics and insight is something that people say is good to have. But in moments like this, it's the differentiator of how quickly do you know what the consumer needs? How do you quickly know where the gap is? How quickly can you build a proposition and then get it out there into the market? We had our own experience of leveraging a lot of the analytics capabilities that we had built over the course of the last 2 years, but just turning them around and say, hey, can we use the same knowledge that we have in a different direction to tell us more about what's happening around us? And it was pretty successful very quickly. So I would say that from being completely blank in March, we had a comprehensive strategy by May with a record time of 30, 45 days. This is, by the way, this is one place where you'll have to bring in partners from outside. You as a brand, you as a business cannot know everything. You'll have to play the network game and understand from all different partners how to bring things together.
I would say with an organization as big as yours to operate, within a 40-day window during that critical time period during COVID, I mean, that's about as real time as it potentially gets.
Yeah, and I wish, I first of all, hope we are never in a situation like that where we're completely blank. But if anytime there is a need that we don't understand, the whole idea is, can we do this much more faster? I get inspired a lot by a lot of the smaller brands and a lot of the digital native brands who do this every day. And my challenge to my team and my challenge to myself is, how do I get faster than them? Evolve and pivot. This is something that we as bigger corporates fear doing. We do not know how to do that well, but the risk of giving up is so much more that we do not look at tangentially pivoting. As a smaller business who had the opportunity to grow multiple folds, we could not have done it without taking things up, seeing how hard we can push it, how far we can push it, and if it does not work, move focus to something else very good. And the spectrum could be new consumer groups, new brand extensions, new events, new brands, new customers. And we have tick marked all of these buckets in all multiple different ways in the last 2 to 3 years.
I was going to save this as a question later, but maybe this is an opportune time to actually address this here. Are there, there's that common term of failing fast within the startup world. I'm curious, when you think about evolving and pivoting, are there any prime examples you can think of where, you failed fast and you learned and you pivoted really quickly, or areas in which you saw that happen in real time?
A lot, right? And the question is, what's the scale of failing fast, right? A/B testing in some sense. It's a fail fast kind of mode, but it's not business changing. It's a very fine tuning of your execution strategy. But then fail fast in a bigger standpoint is you launch different products in the online world, see whether they work, understand within 12 weeks whether there is what we call spark, whether there is any spark that you think you can now make it into a big fire. And then if there is, let's move it to the second round of blowing it up. If not, then let's put into something, put our time and focus into something else. So there are enough examples, probably in the air care category, where we have been trying to disrupt a lot, because it's the you also need a category and you need an industry where the consumers are more receptive to such different kind of things, right? For example, if you take this into pharma, I would like to guess is that there isn't really anything called failing fast. The failing fast that happened is what happened for the COVID vaccine, but that's probably the fastest you can get. But like it goes.
The failing fast happens in the R&D phase, and that I would presume, at a different stage. But that point that you bring up with regard to the scale of failure and the timing of it and kind of the measurement, I think is really critical. But I think that's a good distinction.
Yeah, as one of the things which I learned, and I probably this is also a lot of Shark Tank, watching a lot of Shark Tank, is as a business leader in a startup, your biggest value that you add in is, other than the team that I spoke about assembling, is allocation of resources. And allocation of resources is where you start continuously nudging, understanding, and trying to reallocate your resource into something that you think would be much more bigger. And even though for the team, it looks like a project, at the back end of it, you are processing it as, hey, can we fail faster? Can we move our resources? One of the challenges that we faced, and I think every bigger corporate faced, is the legacy and the little bit of dynamics of how things are seen and how you have to navigate that, right? In a smaller startup, you have a board, you have a VC, and you work with them. In a bigger one, there are these complexities of different groups and stakeholders that you have to manage.
That's right. Yeah, I come from the publishing industry, initially, which for many years was talking about that same sort of evolution towards digital in some ways, and that understanding of legacy versus where you can and need to be innovating is an important aspect of understanding that allocation of resources and when to allocate those resources, right?
Very true. Yeah, resources is such a key. It's short, but the shortage makes you use it much more better.
That's right.
I think this is the second last one, which is all about sharpening your pencils. We did a lot of work with new startups trying to understand how should we operate. I spent a lot of time with D2C brands, with new companies who are trying to form. And one thing which I realized is the path to success for each of these, what we call unicorns, each of these emerging brands is very different. Each one of them have a secret sauce. Even if it is the Dollar Shave Club viral videos, if it is the way Glossier went in and built what they built based on just the blog, it's very difficult to replicate, right? And as me, I used to keep thinking, and as our team, what is our secret sauce? What differentiates us? Like it's not traditional media buy. It's not, people call it performance marketing. All of that is great. Those are tools. But what is it that differentiates and make us win more number of times than less? You will fail, but what is that? And how do you do it? That's why I call it sharpening your pencil, right? And it is valid for the team. It's valid for us as individuals also. As we look at our own career, we said, okay, what really differentiates us? How do we own that thing and just get better and better and be able to do it at a bigger scale?
So what is it? Will you share? What was your secret sauce? Anything that you share that could be not so secret?
For us, I think our secret sauce was speed. One of the key things that differentiated us was, that you said, right, be from completely blank, being let's just shut down our shop, to coming back with a clear strategy, and not only from thinking standpoint and from a strategy standpoint, but also to execution. You have to be better, and that was how do you make it? Is a lot of different things, right? It goes from people, culture, to capabilities that we build in house. Where do you think that you need to leverage your own capabilities? Where you need to build bridges, a lot of different things that come in together.
Yep, makes sense.
And then the last one, I think we refer to it, right? It's part of the secret sauce. It's about shaping your culture. The and again, one of the other things that we learned is the culture of a startup is envious for brands and companies like us. We envy how free and how free idea thinking happens in a startup, right? But that is all because of the culture. And for me, it's like everybody in that team owns the culture. It's not owned by anyone in those kind of organizations. For us, it was about how do we replicate as much as we could in some sense. And I'm a very big proponent of this point, is that your culture is who you hire, who you fire, and who you promote. Because essentially you do not set it up. It's the team who sets it up, and they all follow practices. They follow, people follow people, and that's where it sets up, right? So the whole point of we need to co-own and we need to be protective about the culture that we have within our organizations, even if it's an internal startup. We need to look at with a lot of details. What standards are we setting up as leaders, and what standards are we promoting unknowingly and knowingly? And then how do we deal with success and failure? The last thing, however, in culture, that people sometimes look very outwardly, is they think about it as just, oh, it's a group dynamics. But no, I see it as rock and water. While the rock makes a road for the water does shape the rock. Like whatever we do with the team shapes me, and it has shaped me so much in the last 3 years, starting from my leadership style, starting to my ambiguity of how do I handle it, how am I as a person, how patient am I as a person, and that self-realization is very key, because like we all say, the startup is like a bud. It blooms and it has its own cycle. What you need to realize is that you also grow along with that, and you need to be able to grow along with that. If not, you become an outdated person within the team, which is very different. So I won't say that I have completely knocked it. The self-realization path and process is a long one. It takes time, but I definitely realized how important it is. And the last thing that would be of this whole culture is just having fun. Something which we do not do enough. We get buried under the presentations and the decks that we build again and again. So that's my thing. I think I just wanted to just leave everyone with these 5 things. If I could go back to it, right, is the whole point around team, hearing your consumers and being smarter than anyone else in hearing your consumers, evolving and pivoting based on as quickly as you can, sharpening the ammunitions you have, and owning your culture. I do know when even I built the slide that it was very basic. It looks very basic, but hopefully I could give you a little bit more flair to what it involved.
Yeah, and I think that's it. I mean, it's incredibly interesting, and the devil's always in the details and in the execution when it comes down to it. And each time you do it, there's something very personal to it, and it also lives in a different ecosystem to some extent. And I think this sort of leads into my first question was, so I mean, you have your team within the e-commerce group and within the hygiene group, but then there's other multiple teams, within RB that are also sort of startups. So I'm curious, when you talk about the culture that you've created within your pod, let's call it, like, how is that distinct from a cultural standpoint from the others? And how do you guys learn from one another? And how do you see that shaping the overall group?
Not as much as I would say I would like to, right? That's a challenge between focus and synergy. We as an organization, or we as a team, believe that focus would drive us a little bit ahead for the last 2 years. And there was that run where we said, let's just get our heads down and do what is right for our business. In the last few months, actually, COVID has made us realize there's a lot of synergy also which we can bring in. And so the next path of growth for us as a team and as a company is going to be bringing in more synergies by joining hands, by understanding what people know, because you can never know what the whole world knows. You can only be a page in that. And so it's always beneficial to benefit from what everybody else does.
Well, I suppose it's a little bit like your team of Avengers is also a broader group of other Avengers as well. So, you have leadership above you that is also helping to make sure that, while your head's down and focused on your goals, everybody else is working cohesively against the master plan to some extent, right?
Yeah, and I've heard and I've noticed that center of excellence becomes one of the solutions that companies deploy. We're going through a similar transformation within RB, and I'm trying to understand the pros and cons both sides, right? But I don't think there is one simple solution for each one of them.
Yep, that's interesting. A quick pivot, on conversation to some extent, but we're a data company as Audigent, and I know that as a marketer, especially working with e-commerce, there's a lot of data goes into that. And I was speaking with another CPG marketer, a pretty notable one recently, and he told me that as a marketer that they consider that they don't have a relationship with their customer at all. And I thought it was so strange, partly because I feel like I have a relationship actually with that brand. And certainly with Lysol, for instance, and especially in this past year, I feel like I've got, a very close relationship with the brand. But I'm curious, like, how you think of that, because I know that typically the retailers own the point of transaction. And I think that that's what he was speaking to when he said that, they have the data. How do you think about that and the opportunity with e-commerce to take some of that relationship?
Yeah, I have never been more optimistic about where the world we live in as a marketer, right? Completely. The world we live in traditionally has been a lot more dominated by the retailers who own the last mile with our consumers. So it's something of a B2B2C, right? And so for me, it was always felt like you have a wall and you have a door, and you pretty much open the door and hand over, and the transaction ends there. Where I think the world is now is you have small
windows, and you have windows with curtains, right? So you do not get the full view. And I don't think we need a full view, right? Because if you have a full view, then it becomes a privacy issue, right? But you have a silhouette, and you can try to understand what's happening, right? And that also makes it interesting because your interpretation has a lot more value. If everything was clear, then you don't need marketers. You say, okay, that's happening, and let's do it. But as marketers, if you can really start bringing in understanding, and you bring in the art of understanding what it is, you have a big competitive advantage. So for me, I have been super optimistic, and I've seen this change in the across all different industries and across RB also, the value of data, consumer data. I think where we're going to go is a little bit undecided, right? There is one model which is very much what we see in very digitally developed countries like China, Korea, where like the stats is amazing. Like more than 50% of their whole retail business today in this year is going through online, which is mind-boggling. Even being a person in this field, I never thought I'm going to see that day. But if that's true, there's a lot more things which have happened there to make it work, right? And that's one model. But then the other piece is what's happening in Europe when you start looking at GDPR and compliances and the kind of restriction, right? I see the value in both. I think we as a society and we as an industry will have to find our mid path, and then do what is right and make it work for the business and also for the society.
Yeah, I think there's a balance when you consider, components around privacy and also like the power of marketing when it comes down to it. There's an opportunity to market to people more on a cohort basis and to compel people around your brand, where at the same time there's other opportunities to create kind of micro funnels, I think, as you've noted, like where you can actually be really driving the sales in those different scenarios.
Yeah, going back to my excitement about this marketing, like it has never been more interesting to see those funnels as you talk about, right? It's like, yeah, we've moved beyond TV, but even now in many organizations, you used to have one funnel, but now for the same thing, you're having micro funnels, you can have micro events. It's just so many more touch points, but that's the fun part of it. If you can master it.
Yeah, you bring up TV, which is hot, surely, and CTV has had the opportunity to grow significantly during this past year from a CTV standpoint, enough that audience segmentation, measurement, things are starting to be able to be played within that field that typically weren't really realistic. How are you thinking about CTV at this standpoint? And have you been doing a fair amount of testing in that realm?
Yeah, I've been blessed on that in a little bit. One of my big part of my business is on Amazon, and Amazon has been a big leader in driving that change just because of the ecosystem that they have. And from that standpoint, we see the value of it. We see clearly the value of it, right? We started off with a few more testings, but now the last year has been a lot about scale up. And it's also, we're starting seeing scale up not only in the kind of investment, but also in the kind of ideas that we thought we can seed through TV, right? Through a connected TV. And what are the levers you have in that space to even start influencing, right? Because your traditional digital marketing of programmatic assets and all go away. It's a TV mindset in a very different place, right? I think the future for that is the smart TVs, and when you'll be able to click on those TVs to buy. I was just reading about, I think it was, I don't know, I could be missing it up, but one of the big TV giants, right, are talking about being able to buy online, right? And it's a matter of time. When you watch something, you see something, and you can go down that road, explore that idea as much as possible, come back and watch your show again. But it's all going to be happening in the next 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, that might even, the way that things are operating, it's not Moore's law necessarily at this point, but I think that you talk about the advances in CTV, I think it's, it might be faster than 3 or 4 years. We don't know, I think.
Yeah, and the point that I'll probably, you bring up a good point, Moore's law, right? I like to believe it's not Moore's law that we should be equating it, right? Moore's law was saying the same chip and just how much more compact and how much more processing power it was, but it's a single dimension. The fun about here, it's a snowball effect.
That's right.
The growth and adoption of CTV is, yes, about how the interface is, but it's also about how commerce as a platform grows. How is the experience when I buy in general online? It goes about how video and how do we look at creating messaging in a short 6-second, 15-second video. So all of these are developing in different axes, and all of them come together, converge to really explode one particular dimension. So it's a multifaceted.
Yeah, well, CTV is also related to this device that I have in my hand, also the laptop that here we're speaking on, and all these devices are connected to the opportunity to speak to people. And
yeah, let's think about from Disney Plus. If I can start buying Disney merchandise through Disney Plus, how much more crazy it's going to be.
That's right. That's right. One other thing I wanted to touch upon was the idea of these retail media networks that have been launched. And we'd have a little bit of time here to discuss before we get some questions, but quickly wanted to get your take on what you think the opportunities and challenges are in working with the Walmart Connects, the Roundels, the developing Kroger Precision groups and stuff. It's an interesting relationship, and there's great opportunity, I think, to be driven from them. Correct?
Oh yeah, it's for the first time I feel, and I really applaud and appreciate the retailers bringing us in and saying, hey, let's together speak with the consumer. Right? Going back to the initial speak we had, it wasn't there. It's like, I know my house well. You know what you do outside my house. Just keep doing both of this. It's the first time we're saying, hey, let's all get together, sit across, and do what's right for the end consumer. So it's, I live and breathe that. I have been living and breathing that space for a long time. I can only tell you there are 3 different things that I noticed out here. There is an acceleration of just the number of retailers coming up with these capabilities, right? Till a few probably years back, Roundel was there, Kroger was around there, Walmart was trying to get their act together, and they were still going to somebody else. And then suddenly, even pre-COVID, you start seeing these 3 people coming in, and post-COVID,
Macy's has launched one somewhat recently.
Walgreens has launched one. Yeah, yeah. Like so the challenge for us as marketplace is we could barely manage YouTube, we could barely manage Google relationship and Facebook relationship, right? And that was over and above everything else. Now, how do you work with so many partners. What does a JBP look like? How do you staff people to talk about all of this? How do you take one big idea and really flow it across all of these different partners? So that's an acceleration, right? There's an amplification in what they can do themselves, right? Their capabilities. Again, I think Amazon leads the way, but all others are watching Amazon and they really want to leapfrog. But what can retailer consumer data, the knowledge that they have, the touch points that they own, what can they do better? That capability has got really amplified, right? It was very nascent before. In many of the retailers, it's still nascent, but I'm hopeful that it'll get better. But that's the second piece around it. And the third, which I think the biggest disruption is going to happen inside store now. While we have gone down this journey and there are people who are, the percentage of commerce going through online is going to be great, but people still want excitement. The experience of shopping is different when like the kid in the candy store is an expression which exists because there is a different feeling to it, right? And it's the same feeling we have when we go into into probably like a sports place, right? Or we go into an apparel place. How and why and how it will get redefined is something that I'm looking forward to, right? As brands.
That's what's so interesting. I mean, coming out of COVID, especially when you think of we'll be that much more interested in the physicality and things, or that opportunity to be live and present with certain things, where at the same time there will have been great advances from a digital standpoint. So that interrelationship between the two becomes really exciting, right?
There is so much retail space. All of these offices are going out. There's so much retail space going to be available within the stores, by the way, also, right? If the traffic is getting going down, and it has been going down, it will go down. Then what do you do with the retail space? Do they all become mini amusement parks? I don't know. If they do, then you're talking with consumers in a very different mindset, because then it's not bottom funnel. It's a very different mindset. You have the opportunity to really start talking within the store, top funnel. So I don't know how, when, where, but my excitement when I look at something like Walmart, Roundel, for example, right? Target has proven that a store within a store is a concept. So if you look at their Disney relationship, you're starting seeing digital coming in. Yes, you stock merchandise. Yes, you have a specific area, but you bring digital. Like, where is the next movie's trailer going to be seen there, right? And then what do you think will happen out there? And you can just keep imagining.
That's right. That's interesting. Any marketers that you think of that you've seen that you're particularly excited about? Any sort of examples of particularly innovative thinking, maybe outside of your category, that you think are great examples of that?
I always have a few, I would say, inspirations. Some of them are old data. They stick with me, even if, and they have been with me for the last decade or so. And some of them are just what brands are doing, right? So I classify them in three different, again, buckets. The first one for me is just, I hats off to Unilever and the team there, but how they have been defining purpose is just amazing to me. I got blown out when I saw Sketch, the first Dove campaign out there.
Yep.
That for the first time, as marketers, really said I can speak with the consumer beyond just talking about product. And that happened long time back, right? But that opened up the door, and now every brand has a purpose. So they were quite a pioneer there. And then what they did recently, when they removed the word normal, I was having conversations with colleagues, even some of them in Unilever, and I was at some place, like, who was sitting there thinking that this word should be removed, right? What was that? I just want to imagine what was that discussion going around. But when you go a few layers down, you see it's how deep it is, right? And that's when you start living and breathing a brand, and you change things, which changes the core of the brand.
Well, you realize the creativity aligned with things that are drawn from data or insights, or ways in which we're finding that balance, that art
and the boldness,
right?
The boldness, right? I was like, while it's right, I was just making a joke here as men. I do not know any way else to describe my hair.
right? So if I go in and you now remove the normal hair, I would be spending 5 minutes just thinking which other hair type shampoo should I be using, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, but that's quite a big bold, right, step. So that's one genre of it, right? The second genre is there are a lot of people who have been able to change organizations from inside at a much bigger scale. And I one of the person I follow very closely is Sandeep, who is in Mars. He's the chief digital officer in Mars. I've heard him a couple of times. I just got inspired every time I hear him because the challenge of changing the corporate is so much more difficult, right? You can build a house from scratch, great, but taking a house that you have and then trying to change it and flip it is very much more different. And then the third one is just new brands who inspire me every day on what they do, right? And there are more than enough examples, starting from Harry's to Casper and what all. So that's Hey, Emily, I'm sorry. Have we gone into a completely different discussion?
No, I love, it's always nice when people are able to recognize other brands that are doing good work in the industry too. So no, I love all those examples and definitely agree with you. But thank you both so much. This was amazing. And we're so happy to have you join the program today.
Thank you so much. Now, I know we didn't have a chance to address any audience questions. I didn't see the widget pop up though. So I presume we were just good chatting as we were.
Yeah, no, sometimes we're like, we'll just let them go. And you guys had enough obviously to talk about. So yeah, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. And we hope to have you both back again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you for everyone for inviting us here. And I apologize, we couldn't get to the questions, but have a good afternoon.